that we have the housing authority, so I need to announce that the board, is the recording on everything? Yeah.
Jim, we're going to do the budget committee first.
Oh, okay, that's right. You messed me up there. I had it all figured out.
Could someone bring Elizabeth in the room, please?
Yeah.
All right, if you're ready, Chair, we can start for this portion.
All right, let's go.
Okay, we're going to start today first to finish this part of issues on the budget committee appointments. Commissioners, you received the applications for all 10 applicants right at around 11:30 this morning. I hope you had a chance to look at it. There were 4 top candidates that are recommended by Commissioner Savas and Commissioner Humberston and staff. They are in alphabetical order: Troy Bollinger, John Caldwell, Wilda Parks, and Angela Masco. So we're seeking your direction, commissioners, if you are prepared to make 2 appointments or if you want to do more interviews.
Well, I'd like to make a motion to reappoint Wilda and Sean to the county commission, to the budget committee.
Second.
Okay, I need to pull up my discussion thing. All right, so any further discussion? All right, so will please poll us.
Okay, it looks like we lost Commissioner Savas. Commissioner Fisher?
Aye.
Commissioner Humbertson?
Aye.
Commissioner Schrader?
Aye.
And Chair Bernard.
Aye, motion carries in 4-0. Paul, we lost him, so make note of that. All right, thank you, Elizabeth.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yes, thank you, Elizabeth. So Elizabeth, you can go ahead and notify the candidates, especially Wilda and Sean, that they can join us next week.
I will. Thank you, commissioners. Thank you, Gary.
Now we're ready for the first policy session. So team, if you could please bring in our staff and our housing commissioner, Leenstra, who's in the waiting room, please. And we'll just pause a moment until they're all in the room.
Bless you.
Okay, it looks like those are here. So commissioners, you are now sitting as the Housing Authority of Clackamas County. This is Metro Housing Bond, Notice of Funds Available Bond Award and Allocation Update. We have staff from the Housing Authority of Clackamas County to present. Your Housing Commissioner Leenstra is also here. So I'm not sure who's starting, Jill or Stephen, but please go ahead.
Good afternoon, commissioners. I am thrilled to be here this afternoon. This is a topic we've been anxious to share with you for some time. I'm Jill Smith. I'm the Director of Housing and Housing Services with Clackamas County. And today we'll be seeking a review of the NOFA process of the Housing Authority of Clackamas County Development Team, led by Stephen McMurtry, our Director of Development. Issued on January 22nd. After that, he and his team and our Housing Advisory Board reviewed those very closely, and they want to talk to you about reviewing the applications as well as the recommendations for approval, and they'll be seeking your formal approval of the 3 proposed projects at the July 16th business meeting. And I wanted to point out that we have Devin Ellen. She's our senior housing developer on Stephen's development team here, and she was an integral part of this process. So we wanted to make sure she was here to meet all of you. I'll turn it over to Stephen.
Thank you so much, Jill, and nice to see you all, commissioners. Thank you for having us today. Yes, Devin Ellen on our team is with us, and you'll have a chance to talk with her. She is an integral part of this process and has been really the driver behind all of the great communication with these projects that we've put in front of you, and also helping to assemble our NOFA award package. Just hours and hours of work, so lots of kudos to Devin. I'd also like to note that joining us today is Rose Ojeda. Rose is on our Housing Advisory Board. Rose and I go way back to the days of Northwest Housing Alternatives, where she sat on my board. She has been an integral leader in affordable housing development for over 26 years in our industry here in Oregon and other places, with a background in real estate and nonprofit development. Rose currently works for CASA of Oregon right now, second stint, I believe. So hope you all will welcome her here today. She wanted to be here. We wanted her here as a representation of our Housing Advisory Board. So with that, a little just bit of reframing everything today. Again, before you, we do have our request for the board to move forward with our recommendations on 3 applications for our first Metro Affordable Housing Bond Award. On January 22nd, the development staff, in conjunction with our Housing Advisory Board, released a notice of funding availability, availing 35% of Clackamas County's total bond resources, or $40.67 million. This is all in your packet. I'm just reading so you can follow along. In addition to those bond funds that were released, the Housing Authority also allocated 125 project-based Section 8 vouchers. Those help to serve residents or clients at extremely low incomes, so we're thrilled about that, to have those be accompanying this resource. The NOFA was structured and delivered using our own local implementation strategy, which you were all integral in helping us frame. Metro's Affordable Housing Bond Framework, and those were the key metrics for successful project award. We received applications on April 20th of 2020, totaling 5 projects, proposing a total of 611 units, seeking over $69 million in bond resources, and a total of 221 project-based vouchers. So then we had to go through the tough job as not only development staff and HAC leadership, but also our Housing Advisory Board, to whittle it down to what we have before you today. And what we have before you today are recommended projects located in 2 of our cities, one in Happy Valley, one in Oregon City, and one in unincorporated Clackamas County. The 3 projects propose a total of 413 units, which represents 51% of the county's total bond goal of 812 units, and a request of a total of $44,233,000 in bond funds, and exactly 125 of those vouchers that we put forward being utilized. These 3 projects include a total of 229 units that are 2-bedroom and above, which is 72% of our target goal under the Metro Affordable Housing Bond, and 153 units reserved for households with incomes at 30% or less of area median income, which is 47% of our target goal of 333 units. That's a lot of information to throw out there. Again, this is in your packets, and the primary thing that Devin and I in particular wanted to get to was to frame this for all of you and then open it up for questions. But as you can see in your board packet, Devin's done a great job of presenting our total Metro Bond Award, the percent of total, and how these projects are impacted by the information that I just gave you and what that means overall for our goals. But the one thing that I want to highlight to everybody today is with these 3 projects, kind of going back to where we are, we've already, with this allocation, along with Gladstone, which you're aware of that we've been working on for some time, are putting forward over 50% of the county's total bond goal of 812 units with our first NOFA and 3 projects, plus Gladstone. That's a really exciting benchmark for us all to be at. And so, as Jill mentioned, this will be coming back in front of you in a couple of days for formal approval, but we are recommending that, that the Board of County Commissioners and the Housing Authority Board select option 1, which there are 3 options here. Review and approve the 3 projects as proposed and place the approval on the July 16, 2020 Housing Authority Board of Commissioners meeting as a consent agenda item, authorizing staff to forward the 3 recommended projects to Metro for concept endorsement. Or there's option 2, review the recommended project, direct changes, and place the approval on the July 6, 2020 Housing Authority Board of Commissioners meeting as a consent agenda item, authorizing staff to forward the 3 recommended projects to Metro for concept endorsement, or 3, direct staff to make changes and bring back for additional discussion. We're hopeful that you will ask some questions today and select option 1, and that it will come forward for consent in a couple of days in front of you at the business meeting. And with that, I'd love to open it up for questions that you may have of me, Devin, or Rose, or anyone on.
I don't have any questions. I just have a comment. It's thrilling. I'm very proud of the work you've done, and the distribution of these units is very important. And I'm just thrilled that this will be on our consent agenda and we can move this forward. This bond measure, this opportunity is a big leap forward, a huge leap forward. And we could never have done it without that. So I got to thank the voters who supported this this issuance. And thank you for your hard work, Devin. I don't think we've met, and I'm thrilled. So Sonia might have some questions. Sonia.
Yeah, thanks. So, Stephen, I wonder if you could just walk through the scope of the 3 different projects. And I'm mostly interested in the diversity of the projects as far as how they met some of our goals regarding mixed income, public-private partnership, some of those key policy initiatives that we were really hoping to advance with these Metro housing dollars.
Mm-hmm. Those are great questions. I want to start with our own local implementation strategy, Commissioner Fisher, and where we arrived at this. Yes, we did prioritize public-private partnerships, of which each one of these is representative of that. In other words, each sponsor has come forward and requested to be associated with the Housing Authority or Clackamas County in some fashion, either for issuance of private activity bonds, which is a revenue generator back to the county and to the Housing Authority, something that we've gone through before, and various other partnerships through resident services and all of that. One thing that we were hopeful in this first round that we have not been able to achieve in this particular round was, more diversity in incomes at each one of these developments. We've talked a lot about the opportunities to provide for 61 to 80% of area median income and utilize bond funds. Thus far, in all of the proposals, none of these first 3 awardees has suggested any units that are above 60% at this point in time. A lot of that has to do with the financial climate right now and the fact that in our market, we're seeing some stagnation on what we would call more market rate apartment rentals. And so that might have something to do with it. We know that that is a high priority, and so we are working with project sponsors to see if that might be an option as we move forward. But we certainly feel like we might be able to create more of that income diversity in the next couple of rounds of bond projects. Certainly at places like Hillside Park, our own redevelopment, where we built that into our framework. So I just wanted to touch on that candidly right up front. We won't see at this point in time any units that are above 60% as proposed. As far as I want to give a chance to turn it over to Devin a little bit, who had a tremendous amount of work in this. And maybe, Devin, you could help just walk us through the 3 proposals, their locations, and kind of walk everybody through the map and some of the metrics that we originally looked at with these properties and why they were initially selected based on that geographic diversity. Could you do that for us?
Sure, yeah. Hi, I'm Devin Ellen. I'm thrilled to be here today. So just one quick correction. Anna's project, the Fuller Street Station, is proposing 5 units at 80% AMI. So we do have 5 projects there, or 5 units rather. So let's see, I'll start off with the first project, Good Shepherd Village. This was brought forward by Catholic Charities and Caritas, and it's located in the Rock Creek area of Happy Valley. They're proposing 142 units for families, seniors, 7 veteran units, and 8 permanent supportive housing units, supporting homeless individuals and families. There is a diverse unit mix here, 51 bedrooms, 62 bedrooms, and 23 bedrooms. And they are proposing 58 30% AMI units and 83 60% and below AMI units. The second project is Maple Lane Apartments, and this was brought forward by Community Development Partners in partnership with Hacienda CDC. This is located right near Clackamas Community College, and they are proposing 171 units. This will be family housing with 12 units set aside for agricultural workers and 9 units set aside for homeless households transitioning out of homelessness. 42% of these units are reserved for households with incomes below 30% and below. And again, another pretty diverse unit mix of 1, 2, 3, and 4 bedrooms. And then AMI mix of 100, 60% AMI and below, and 70, 30% AMI and below. The third project we're recommending is Fuller Station Family Housing, and this was brought forward by Geller Silvis and Associates. It's located at the Fuller Road Max Station Park and Ride. They are proposing 100 units of family housing with 25 permanent supportive housing units, serving folks transitioning out of homelessness. Their unit mix is 17 1-bedrooms, 63 2-bedrooms, and 23 bedrooms. And their AMI mix is 25, 30% AMI and below, 7, 50%, 54, 60%, and then the 5, 80% and below. I'm happy to answer any other questions if you have anything that you're specifically looking for.
I have a question.
Okay.
So I'm looking at the chart where it says total Clackamas County Metro bond allocation, round 1 of NOFA projects, etc.
Okay.
And it shows Fuller Street, Maple Apartments, and Good Shepherd Village. And then down below, production goals includes the Webster Street or Webster Road project. Now, are all of them going to be funded through the NOFA funds, or is there a different funding source for the HAC units on Webster?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the 3 projects I just covered are offered through the NOFA, or funded through the NOFA. And then the Housing Authority has set aside Metro bonds for the Webster Road project. So the source is the same, but the Webster project isn't going through the NOFA.
Any particular reason why? I'm just sort of curious.
Commissioner Humberson, if you remember, the Gladstone Webster Road project was the pilot project that was authorized from Metro. Each jurisdiction was allowed 1 pilot project. And so it is not subject to the same details that we did through the NOFA. We weren't going to just allocate in that way. We'll go back to Metro. It's already been approved. And so we wanted to save the bulk of our NOFA dollars to be able to go out into the community and get additional units built. So
Okay.
that's the reason.
So that's all I want to know. Just curious as to how it was working, because you read it first and it's 3 projects, then you go down and it's 4 projects, and it implies that it's being funded in some different way. And I just wanted to,
Sure.
but it is all essentially from the same fund. It's just split differently.
It is, and that's a great distinction. I'm glad you brought that up. What I didn't do was do a good job of explaining. This chart may look a little bit familiar to you, because in our local implementation strategy, it is our reporting mechanism back to Metro and to you all as we move forward. So what we were intending to do here was to create the same format that shows that now that we've added these 3 projects, if you choose to elect to approve them, we would see then these totals include things like Webster Road, which has already started to be funded.
Thank you.
Yep.
Jim, your mic, didn't hear you.
Paul and then Martha.
Yeah, thanks for everyone being patient with me. I'm having a heck of a technological day here with my PC. So Stephen, staff, great work. I have 2 questions, or a question and a comment. That is that the Fuller Road project, that's obviously a new project from scratch. The Maple Lane project, Maple project, is that really a greenfield project?
It's a new construction development on that site.
Okay. What's on the site right now?
It is. There are some. My understanding, and Devin, correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is there are a couple of existing structures, maybe 1 or 2 single-family residences that are on that site. Directly adjacent to that site is supposed to be the future home, if it's still moving forward, of Advantage Credit Union. And so I think it's a larger sale of those parcels going on there. I think there's just some limited existing structures.
Okay. So my comment / question is that I believe it was our goal to try to spread our housing units around the county in all different areas. And we already have affordable units in Milwaukee, unincorporated Oregon City, and this one's in Oregon City, obviously. So is there any opportunities for west of the river or other areas east of 205? East of 205.
Great questions. I would say that the answer to that is yes. Certainly on the west side of the river, we have had, nothing is solid until it is. We at the Housing Authority don't anticipate, though we are weighing with our Housing Advisory Board, of which Rose is here, on when our next bond allocation may be. We're looking at the timing of that. We're looking at market conditions where we can maximize on the best deal to get the fewest resources out there, the biggest bang for the buck. I have been in conversations, not only with Metro, but with some other jurisdictions. I believe Jill has as well, throughout the history of the bond, potentially, and now that it's in place, with Lake Oswego. Had some conversations with West Lynn. Candidly, Commissioner, there were no sites that came forward at this time that were ready on the west side of the river. It's an ongoing struggle. We would like to see some of those communities create additional affordable opportunities for the people that live in their jurisdictions or the people that work in their jurisdictions. So that's a high priority of ours, to continue to work with Metro and some of those jurisdictions on seeing if there are opportunities there. We will have at least another round or 2 of bonds that we'll do another NOFA on, and hope that some of those jurisdictions are ready to put forth projects at that time.
Okay, especially on the west side, I don't know how much of what you have displayed today in the spreadsheet contains a percentage of workforce, but I know on the west side, what I'm hearing I've heard from some employers over there is that their employees can't afford to live there, and that having a workforce element to those facilities is really important. So I'm hoping that all of these have a mix, right, of different AMI and workforce. Do they all?
They didn't, I mean, these three that we're proposing right now, Devin corrected me that I was wrong. We have one project that is proposing what we would call traditionally workforce, those that are getting up towards 80% of area median income. One of the challenges that we have goes back to the low-income housing tax credit and Section 42 code, that when we mix tax credits, and we can have a sidebar conversation about this as well, but when we mix tax credits with other available financing, the regulatory agreements that are associated with the tax credits must rule, which limits that if tax credits are used in a project, they can only serve incomes, as of now, at 60% or less of area median income. So if we add something that's quote unquote workforce, though there may be a source provided to us through Metro, it actually reduces our tax credit basis. Senator Wyden and Senator Cantwell, some others have tried to put forward a middle income housing tax credit. I'm hopeful that some of those products come out soon because I think it would help us achieve exactly what you're talking about.
Okay. All right, Martha. Your mic.
Is the Maple Apartments in unincorporated Clackamas County?
No, Maple Apartments are in Oregon City.
Okay, so they are in a city, and you did say there's agricultural worker housing there. What is the plan to get these workers transported to their places of work? I'm just asking because I was a farmer and that was a big barrier. So is there anything in process to eliminate that barrier that they'll have in order to move from an urban kind of, as I said, kind of a peripheral area to where they need to go to do their work and where they're employed? And is it possible to use the Metro, the Here Together dollars to make that kind of transport possible? In fact, I would also like to know if all of these projects are going to be targeted projects for the wraparound services that the Here Together dollars are going to provide.
So I can address the last part of that question. Absolutely. Anytime that there's a commitment for homeless units, the supportive service dollars that Here Together will be providing will be prioritized to make sure that people who are chronically homeless can live there successfully with services. That's the whole purpose of the measure. Yeah.
So it's focused toward the chronically homeless, which is where the most need is.
Mm-hmm.
You got any plans for when we house people who are agricultural workers to provide any transport, and are there dollars for that? Or is that just simply going to be on the, is that there, farmer? I mean, is there any relief at all for anything like that?
We can talk a little bit about the way the community development partners and Hacienda CDC structured their response. We also uniquely have Rose Ojeda, who previously worked with the co-sponsor on this. That Rose, you can feel free if you want to chime in on the thoughts behind this particular issue. I would say this much, sure, that it was a very well thought out narrative that that there are some things, Commissioner, that have been addressed that we are hopeful to find additional financing to move these sorts of things forward. Right now, as contemplated, the sponsor is anticipating in their operational expenses that some level of assistance for things like transportation would be handled by the project. Right. But the goal would be to work with either Here Together or other community action agencies that could help address things like transportation and other issues. And Rose, is there anything else that you'd like to add to that?
Well, I did spend 9 years working with agricultural workers at CASA of Oregon. I returned to CASA, but in a different program. And then I know that at Hacienda, they were working on a transportation options as a pilot project for for one of their projects
Okay.
in Northeast Portland, but they are working on optional transportation options that may be available, including potentially some kind of a shuttle service. Now, for agricultural workers, what they often do is they're famous at pooling their resources, and what inevitably happens in a lot of these developments is that there's one person with the largest vehicle who ends up taking a bulk of the workers to their places of employment if they all are living within the development. But that aside, we do need to address these transportation options to places of employment, and Hacienda is beginning a pilot project to address that.
Okay, if you can get me more information on that, I'd really appreciate it.
Sure, happy to.
Yeah,
I will send it to Devin and Stephen, and they will forward it on to you.
Yeah, back in the day, I worked with the Benedictine Sisters Mount Angel on
Yes,
farm.
I know them well.
So I'm an oblate there. And so the bottom line is that that was a huge problem, and I don't think it's going away.
No, it's not. And that's why we really need to address these transportation options.
Right. And I had folks wanting to live in my barn. I mean, just to let you know at the time. So it was a pretty dire situation. And so I have a real interest in the agricultural community and how those folks get the services they need. Because oftentimes I don't want them to fall through the cracks because this is so entirely urban and suburban in many ways. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you for the question.
Anya?
Yeah, so I really appreciate the work that's gone into this, and I especially really appreciate the housing for agricultural workers and the culturally specific services that are being proposed here. I think that's really pretty awesome, and I just want to say hats off. I'm still really confused. I was just texting Jill to say, is it possible to ask these applicants to look at more income diversity? I mean, I'm just concerned because the whole thought is when we proposed this Metro bond dollars and we went out to the voters, and I did a lot of those phone calls with lots of people pushing for these dollars for the voters to approve this. The one thing that we really talked about was income diversity, public-private partnership, and not segregating people and creating these exclusive communities of all the people with need, of having all of that integration and diversity included. And that's what was communicated to the people that voted for this. And so I understand low-income tax credits come with a whole federal regulatory framework, but these are local dollars. These Metro bond dollars are local. And so the idea of being able to use the local dollars to leverage other partnerships to make things appropriate and even innovative, this is innovative. I want to tell you what's being proposed here, but it doesn't include that piece of that diversity. So it's just a real concern of mine in looking at this. And I don't know how you explain it to me in a way that's going to, in a policy session, I may need to sit with Stephen. It took me quite a while, well, not too long, but some conversations with Jill and others to get up to speed on like how PEDCOR was financed, for instance, or other income, or with Anna Geller with how those are financed. And so I got that framework, but with these dollars, I'm just not understanding why we can't have some higher AMI and more market rate, why we can't just say, come on, why can't we have these units? Just so we create inclusive, diverse communities.
But they don't pencil out.
Heard. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
So we need to move through this one. So let's button it up. I'll tell you that having been a little bit involved in affordable housing, it's all about the math. It's how you can work all that out. And, you know, when these projects are applied for with the banks or whoever the lenders are, they've got all that worked out, and to ask them to go back and recalculate and do it differently is a challenge.
Yeah, so my comment, just building on the first one and also kind of building on what Commissioner Schrader and Commissioner Fisher are talking about. in the bond, it was certainly advertised as such that it would include a range or a mixture of some workforce housing. And I think we all have the expectation that would be mixed together. And it's also probably goes without saying that there are probably people that are employed, that are part of the workforce, that are 60% AMI or less, okay? But I think the expectation was that it would include that range from 60 to 80. And Stephen, you did a great job of explaining that. So my question is, how much of those Metro dollars are I didn't think that all those dollars would alone by themselves require or have to leverage other tax credits per se. I just assumed that parts of the bond, the funding of the bond could stand by the virtue of itself, just bonding, simple straight out bonding could build whatever we wanted. So are we trying to maximize everything with the tax credits, or are we forced to use tax credits on everything in the bond? I didn't think we did have. I didn't think we had to do that.
Not a requirement to use tax credits, but certainly the bonds on their own in today's current construction market and lending environment are not enough to achieve the unit counts that we need to achieve, especially when we talk about things like 2-bedroom and above. And I just want to say, these are all fantastic questions. I'd love to continue this conversation. Commissioner Fisher, I hear you loud and clear. We will continue to work with the existing sponsors if you allow these 3 to move forward, to see if there aren't additional opportunities, and maybe we can even work on things like prioritizing in our next NOFA, and making sure that, and understanding that we might be putting more bond dollars in to assure the kind of economic and income diversity that we're looking for. And because we've done such a fantastic job through Devin Ellen's efforts on this round, and we are so far ahead in our unit count with a very minimal allocation of bonds thus far, that we will have more ability to be more aggressive with these income variances in future deals. I mean, we are kind of constrained by the lending market, but I would love to continue these conversations and come back and talk about this again.
All right, so we're good moving forward with option 1, okay? I see nodding heads. So I think one thing that Sonia was really saying is that project site diversity of incomes, which is Milwaukee's going to definitely give us a lot of opportunity. But and Anna's project does give us some diversity in it. So on the other ones, not so much. But anyway, so we're good with moving forward to option 1.
Do you need a motion?
Yeah, it sounds like it. Yeah.
Move to approve option 1.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and second to approve option 1. And so any other discussion? All right, please poll us. Be sure to include Ann.
Commissioner Lindstrom,
Aye.
Commissioner Schrader,
Aye.
Commissioner Fisher.
I'm going to be either a no or an abstain until I can get the information that I'm just not feeling comfortable with this right now.
Okay, so that'd be abstain, I guess.
Commissioner Savas,
Aye.
Commissioner Humbertston,
Aye.
and Chair Bernard.
Aye, motion carries 5 and 1 abstain. All right, thank you.
Thank you all
See if
very
you can get her those answers before the 16th. Okay.
So that's this Thursday. It's on your consent agenda this Thursday. So Stephen, if your team can talk with Commissioner Fisher and provide her as much as you can prior to Thursday. But so you're not approving this today. You're approving it to put on your agenda for Thursday.
Correct.
Which is already there. So.
All right.
All right. So with that, hold staff. We're going to flip the policy session order and do the second housing authority now, because there's no need for Commissioner Leenstra to have to hang out for 40 minutes. So we're going to go next to the Omnibus Resolution Webster Road Redevelopment Project. You are still sitting as a housing authority of Clackamas County. We have Stephen and Jill to present. Please go ahead.
Great. Thank you all. This is our opportunity. We were just talking about our Webster Road redevelopment, Metro Affordable Housing Bond Project. This is our opportunity to bring this project back in front of you and give you an update as we move forward with an authorizing resolution to allow us to admit things like financing and our general contractor, et cetera. I will update everyone that through a competitive process, Walsh Construction was also selected to be the general contractor for Webster Road. We're thrilled to have them on board. And so we're very, very excited to bring this forward to you today. And some key components of the resolution, I want to just read these out to you. This resolution will provide the Housing Authority authorization to enter into the following agreements in relation to funding sources that the Housing Authority either has or intends to apply for in support of this project. An application to Oregon Housing and Community Services for an allocation of private activity bond volume cap to gain 4% low-income housing tax credits. An application to Clackamas County Community Development Department for a home loan. An application to Metro for affordable housing bond funds in the next stage of affordable housing bonds. And an application to Oregon Housing and Community Services for permanent supportive housing. And an application to Oregon Housing and Community Services for those 4% low-income housing tax credits without bonds, should they allow the Housing Authority to issue our own private activity bonds. This resolution also provides delegation of authority to the Director of Health, Housing, and Human Services, the Executive Director of the Housing Authority, and the Director of Housing Development as authorized representatives to act on behalf of the authority in its own capacity as a special limited partner and as the sole member of the general partner to finalize the terms of, execute, acknowledge, and deliver the actions and documents authorized. This is the same structure that we used on Hillside Manor, the same structure that we just used, on Hillside Manor for its limited partnership, and will be a recurring theme as we start to move these projects forward. So this is another example of an authorizing resolution to allow us to take the next steps in this project. Omnibus agreements, as we've talked before, are standard practice and used to provide one point of execution for funding applications and the financing documents, et cetera. As I mentioned before, it's been used on Easton Ridge, Rosewood Station, and again for Hillside Manor's limited partnership and closing. The Housing Authority has retained Robert Sullivan as outside counsel on the Webster Road rehabilitation. Rob is the author of this resolution and has acted as representation for HAC in matters related to the acquisition of pre-development of this project. All documents referenced in the omnibus agreements entered into by an authorized representative will be reviewed and approved by Rob, acting as independent third-party counsel for HAC. And with that, we have three options here. Approve the request to allow the Housing Authority to move forward with approval of resolution number 1948 on the July 16th consent agenda. Option 2, request additional information. Ask staff to make edits and place amended resolution on consent agenda for upcoming July 16th business meeting. Or 3, request substantial changes and ask staff to bring amended report and resolution to the board for consideration at a later date. Staff recommends that the board select option 1 and approve the request to allow the Housing Authority to move forward with the resolution number 1948 on the July 16th consent agenda. And I'd like to open it up to any questions you may have.
Ken and then Paul.
One comment, one question. I particularly like the Webster Road project because I think there is a real need for single room occupancy type facilities. Used to be something that a single man or a single woman could avail themselves of back probably 75 or 100 years ago. And it's one of those things that sort of disappeared. So I think it will meet a very specific need. I did have a question related to all of this. If you build a project where you include, say, 5 units of above AMI availability, does that change how many units you're able to build?
In this particular, no, not necessarily. No, it does not. It comes down to how you finance it.
Okay, so if we say you got 5 units on the previous one for above AMI, that's not lowering the number of actual units available that are going to be built.
No, that is correct. It's not lowering the actual number of units that are going to be built. It creates a problem because the overall cost of the units and the requirements under the bond to meet those units, particularly at 2-bedroom and above, the bond sources are not enough to pay for those units which is why this project sponsors are utilizing other sources like tax credits to help fill the gap.
So for all intents and purposes, the size of the unit that you build will determine how many of those units you can build.
Correct. And the level, yeah, yes, that is correct.
Okay, thank you. I'm good.
Paul,
Yes, Stephen, where did we land up on the, it's 48 units as I see in the packet, but where do we end up on as cost, total cost, or cost per unit?
I mean, that's something that's still in flux right now. I don't have that right in front of me, Commissioner. I can email that over to you if you would like, or send that to the group and it could be sent out to everyone. I'd have to bring up a pro forma real quick, and I know we're stressed for time.
Sure.
But if you'd like me to, I can circulate that around.
Okay, so in the interest of time then, is it much higher or is it close to where we thought we'd be? I know there were concerns when we were kicking this off about that.
No, it's relatively close to where we thought we were going to be originally because of a couple of different factors. One, that the team was successful in receiving permanent supportive housing grant dollars for construction that helped, overall costs are still remaining the same, but that helped sort of cushion the blow with bond dollars. And, we've been for a very long time now working with our architects to refine and try and keep costs down as much as we can. And now that we have our general contractor on, things seem to be trending about where we thought they were going to be originally, but I will get that number to you.
Thank you.
all right, so we probably need a motion to put this on the agenda, which it's already on the agenda. But Ken,
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I move to approve option 1.
is there a second? Ann?
Second.
All right. It's been moved and seconded to put it on the consent agenda for this Thursday's business meeting. And any further discussion? All right, please poll us.
Commissioner Lindstrom,
Aye.
Commissioner Fisher,
Aye.
Commissioner Humbertson,
Aye.
Commissioner Savis,
Aye.
Commissioner Schrader,
Aye.
and Chair Bernard.
Aye, motion carries unanimously. Thank you all very much. Great work.
You.
See you Thursday, I suppose.
All right, take care.
Thanks. All right, Gary, we're going to announce that we're adjourning as the house, and thank you, Ann.
All right, thank you.
Adjourning as the Housing Authority Board and reconvening as the North Clackamas Park and Recreation District.
Okay, here we go.
Yes, so next, commissioners, is Oak Lodge and Gladstone Community Project Update. We have staff from Business and Community Services and the North Clackamas Parks and Recreation District and several other guests to present. So we'll start with Laura and staff. I assume, Christina, you know who's coming in, so please go ahead with that. And Laura, if you'd like to kick it off, please. All right, Laura's on mute. Laura, could you please unmute?
I don't think she's on yet.
All right.
There's some people missing. So I can try and reach out to them if you'd like.
Okay. Well, let's let Laura go ahead and kick us off and tell us who else needs to be.
Are we going to start at 2:30 or are we?
Sorry, we're ahead of schedule now, Laura.
We're ahead of schedule. Can I text people?
I'm sorry, do you need to wait till 2:30?
Possibly, yeah.
Okay, commissioners, can we take a quick break, please?
Sure.
Yes. Coffee.
We'll take a quick break.
Thanks.
I am.
Was that you playing the music?
Yep.
Thank you, and
Don't-
I'm sorry.
Please don't do that again.
I'm going to do it all the time for you, Ken.
Oh, God, no.
Okay, we are back. This is Oak Lodge and Gladstone Community Project Update. Thank you for being flexible, staff. Laura, please go ahead.
Just FYI, I can't start my video. It says the host has stopped it. So now I can do it. Thank you. So do we have our team on here or do we not? Do we? Oh, we do. Okay, there you are. Okay. So good afternoon, Chair Bernard, Commissioners, Administrator Schmidt. Thank you for having us here today. We are very, very excited to provide an update on the Oak Lodge and Gladstone Community Project. Due to the time limit, I will keep my comments short, but I do want to share some background information and my excitement for the progress of the project. If you recall, we signed a settlement agreement with Gladstone in October of 2017, so it's been almost 3 years, which called for the county to build 2 libraries, one in Gladstone at the site of the former City Hall and the other in the Oak Lodge unincorporated area. The agreement called for a 1 library, 2 building approach with both libraries operated by Clackamas County to achieve economies of scale and to best provide library services to the residents of the Oak Lodge and Gladstone communities. In a similar time frame to this settlement agreement, NCPRD and the North Clackamas School District entered into a strategic partnership to acquire 3 school properties. One of those was the Concord property in Oak Lodge. Following that settlement agreement, we knew we had many, many tasks to complete before we could get started with the master plan. We had to hire an in-house project manager to lead the project. We had to create 2 citizen task forces, one for the Gladstone Library and one for the Concord property and the Oak Lodge Library. And that included the recruitment of members, interviews, and selection of members, creation of a charter, etc. We had to update the library district intergovernmental agreement with the 12 libraries in Clackamas County, the library cities in Clackamas County. We had 11 cities that passed that amendment, IGA amendment. We had to negotiate an intergovernmental agreement with the city of Gladstone to transfer all the Gladstone Library employees, their library facility, and their library operations to the county. And this took many, many months. We had to issue an RFP, review and score the proposals, conduct interviews, select the team, and develop a work plan, and then finally execute the contract with OPSIS Architecture for master planning. Again, I could go on and on with the many steps to get where we are today. However, I will end and take a minute to thank the many members of the team who have helped to get us where we are today. Our county administrator has a vision which I fully support for one county. I believe this project is a great example of the one county concept and the benefits of working as one team. So I want to thank, first of all, the members of both task forces, and in particular, the chair of the Concord Task Force, Doug Jones, and the chair of the Gladstone Task Force, Lisa O'Brien, and both are on the Zoom call today, and we'll be making some brief comments at the end of the presentation. And I also want to thank several internal departments and partners. I am grateful for their assistance and expertise. PGA has been with us every step of the way, and they are a vital component of our efforts. In particular, I want to call out Amber Johnson and Ellen Rogalin and Melina DeFrancisco. She is with NCPRD, but for their assistance with community engagement, public meetings, and various focus groups. I want to recognize County Counsel Jeff Munns for all of his work in helping to draft and update the intergovernmental agreements. I want to recognize HR, Finance, and Facilities for their assistance in transferring the Gladstone Library employees, the Gladstone Library facility, and from Gladstone to Clackamas County. I want to thank Scott Archer and his NCPRD team for all of their assistance and support. And we have our administrative support staff, Jessica Botteron and Liz Lawson. And then I can't forget Mitzi Olson, Library Director for both Gladstone and Oak Lodge, and the staff from both of those libraries. They've been through quite a transition in moving from one entity to another. I want to thank the City of Gladstone for their support, and we couldn't have done it without Jackie Betts again, and the city manager of Gladstone and her team. And then we have Catherine Krieger, who's our in-house project manager. Thank you, Catherine. She's done an amazing job on this. And we have the Opsis architecture team. And here, I want to recognize Jim, I'm probably going to butcher his last name, Calvelage, and project manager Jennifer Hoffman, as well as Johnson Architects and JLA Public Involvement. Catherine, along with the Opsis team, have done an amazing job in moving this project forward and keeping it on track in the middle of COVID. That's a big, big task. And so finally, none of this would have been possible without the support of the Board of County Commissioners and Administrator Schmidt. They have made it very clear that they support this project and are willing to fill the funding gap that does exist. So in closing, I want you to know that this project is a top departmental priority. My staff and I are committed to seeing this project through to the end, ultimately ending with 2 new libraries, a community center, and a park. So with that, I will turn it over to Catherine Krieger to go through the PowerPoint presentation. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Can everyone hear me? Good, thank you. Good afternoon, Chair Bernard, Commissioners, and Administrator Schmidt. And thank you, Laura, for your introduction and kind words. And thank you, Scott and Laura, for your guidance on this project. It's been about 8 months since the staff last gave you an update on the project. And it is, as Laura mentioned, a complicated project and a joint project of many things, including the 2 libraries, the community center, the park, and administrative offices for NCPRD. The staff, task forces, community members, and the design team have been very busy, especially lately. So I'm going to jump right into the presentation. So let's see if this can work smoothly. Hold on. Oops. Okay, so you should be seeing a full screen now. Thank you for your patience. And you have also, this project has also come before you a number of times. There have been numerous policy sessions where you have helped form the task forces and the charters for the task forces, as well as a couple of business meetings in the last 1.5 years or so. One which approved the contract with Opsis Architecture, which allowed us to begin in earnest on the master planning, and that was last October 2019. And then more recently, the approval of the IGA between Gladstone and Clackamas County for the construction of the library and the operation of the library. This was that second piece of the settlement agreement with the city of Gladstone. So today I'd like to give you an update on the schedule, the task force work, community engagement, and I'm really excited to bring you the design alternatives and cost and funding. We'll touch on that as well as the next steps. So this is the schedule that was outlined last fall, and it carries us through to construction beginning in about spring 2022. This schedule was outlined all the various parts. These 4 circles here are the ones that are outlined the master planning. We are here, we're in the near the end of the design alternatives phase. It's phase 3 of the project. And then when the preferred alternative is determined by the task forces to be recommended to you, that will come to you in the fall, this fall, probably in October of 2020. I do want to emphasize that we are in lockstep between the Gladstone Library and the Concord project. I know there's been a lot of concern about that since the beginning of the project and even as late as today. So I just want to note that we are working in tandem and working very closely together, and the projects are both out for virtual open houses right now through August 2nd. So the task forces have been very busy, the Gladstone Task Force and the Concord Property Task Force. They especially very busy in the last couple of months. But in the beginning, they created community values. There was a set each for both task forces. And then from that, they created evaluation criteria from those values. The task forces also participated on a selection committee to select Optus Architecture, our design team. They determined uses for the libraries, the community center, and the park, along with the broader community. And then most recently, the Concord Task Force agreed that the Oak Lodge Library is feasible on the Concord property, given a few caveats, knowing everything they know to date, just the information they know to date, and also assuming that there's no fatal flaws, and we're with them on that. So the community engagement, as you requested, and we also wanted, staff also wanted, and the community wanted a robust community engagement, as you remember. So we have done that. We have had 3 parts so far. We're in the 3rd part, this online open house survey, but you might remember the large gathering at the Concord property last year. And it was followed by a survey in English and Spanish to the public, and then followed along by design workshops for the public. And then, as I mentioned, there is currently an open houses and surveys online. But more importantly, we have also been reaching out to focus groups, to the Spanish-speaking community and underrepresented communities, and to teens. We were pretty successful in the first round of outreach with the Spanish-speaking community. We held a focus group at the Oak Grove Elementary School, and then also at the Gladstone Children and Family Center. I will say it's unfortunate, though, during COVID, it's much more difficult to reach these groups, and we are doing our best. We've translated a flyer into Spanish. We are going to post it around the community, and we are hoping to get people engaged through the open house and surveys, but it is much more difficult than doing it in person. So jumping into the design alternatives, do Gladstone first and then Concord. So just to get you oriented, Gladstone is, the library is in the center of town. It's at the intersection of Portland Avenue and East Dartmouth Street. It's this red square here. And if you look over on the picture number 1, that's the City Hall. It is now vacant. They've moved up the street. And this is where the library will be placed, and the old City Hall will be demolished. And this was part of the workshop that all of the community members created at different groups, placing the different parts and pieces onto the site to show what a challenge it is to get everything on. And then the design team took that information and created 3 alternatives. So I'll run through those for you. The first one is option 1. It has a Portland entry off of Portland. It has a great plaza entry, and then a meeting room off of East Dartmouth. It has a smaller courtyard. Some of the things that are not quite as positive in this one is there was a desire for the children's area to be connected to the courtyard, to be able to go out into it, and also a solid wall here. So not as inviting as you're moving from north to south on Portland Avenue. And the total project cost of this one is $4.9 million. I'll get to cost, funding sources and uses more at the end of the presentation. The second option is the Dartmouth entry, so-called because the entry's on Dartmouth, and also has a large plaza. You can see the courtyard is bigger. Some of the things that don't work as well in this scheme are the workroom and the restrooms are facing a major and important main street, I call it, for Gladstone, which is Portland Avenue. And then the children's area is next to the courtyard on this one, which is was seen as a plus. This one was $5.1 million. And then the corner entry design, option number 3, now currently the task force's preferred option, until more information is gathered from the broader community. You can see it has a corner entry. It has a larger courtyard. It's a little more open to the north. It also has a meeting room which can expand into the children's area, and has a lot of positive attributes about it. It is a total project cost of $4.9 million. Moving on to the Concord property. Also, to get you oriented, here's Concord, perpendicular to McLaughlin. Here's the original building with the 1940s addition to it. And this is a 6-acre site. I didn't mention on Gladstone, that is a 6,000 square foot building. So on Concord, you have all probably been to the site, and we did the same things with the site and with the interiors of the building in a workshop at Concord down in the cafeteria. And people also struggled with where things should go. It's really quite a complex mix of uses and desires for the property. But the design team came up with 7 options. The task force narrowed it to the 3 options that I'm going to show you here today. The first one is a freestanding library. This was something that the community has been requesting for this project for the last couple of years. So it was important for us to take a look at that. You can see that it has a fairly large plaza area. It has the smallest park of all of the options. It does have a new gym, which is tucked back here behind the community center for NCPRD. One of the least favorable characteristics about this one were not only the size of the park, but also blocking the view of the Concord School, and then also the sort of configuration of the parking, which was long and narrow, drawn out, and not near the entries of the buildings. The second one, and this one is the task force preferred option, is with the library on the east, on the north side of the building. You can see that what it does is it allows for a better consolidation of the parking area. It also allows for a larger park. This one's almost 2 acres. It has a smaller plaza area. Also, the new gym for the community center is tucked behind the building. And this one was the lowest cost for the library and and a mid-range for NCPRD. One of the significant characteristics that we've been paying attention to with all of these projects are how much shared space is there between the library and NCPRD, because there's a lot of synergy, not only in the uses of those shared parts of the project, but also in shared costs for things such as building one entry or one restroom, or sharing a circulation space, and even so far as to say sharing something like operations like a janitor. So this one has more shared space than the first one. The first one, which is the freestanding, has the least amount of shared space. And this one is a total of $35.8 million total project cost. And the third and the last option I'm going to show you is this one. It has the library tucked where the gym was. It does not have a new gym for the community center. It does have the largest open space. You can see it's a 2-acre park, and it is the smallest community center, no new gym, and some of the just the configuration of the library, so long and narrow, the way it laid out, had some challenges as well. So that's the fun and exciting part. Here's the cost and funding. So I'll start with the Gladstone and the Oak Lodge libraries, and then move on to Concord. So because of obviously their different funding sources. So here's Gladstone and Oak Lodge. Here are the ranges in the alternatives that I just showed you. And here next to that are the two currently preliminary preferred options by the task force for a total here of 17 million. These costs, just so you know, are not construction costs. These are total project costs. They include indirect costs, soft costs of fees, permitting, and other things as like hazardous abatement and things such as that. The funding sources I think you have seen before from the library district reserves, capital, county capital, the beginning fund balance, the library bond at $310,000 a year, a potential seismic grant that we're looking into from the state. And then that's a subtotal of 8.7 million, leaving a gap for the Clackamas County bond of between 8.3 and 12.4. So if the preferred options are selected at 17, it's the $8.3 million gap filled by the county with a total of 21. So I'm sure you'll probably have some questions about that. Moving on to the NCPRD, this is very preliminary. We've just begun working on this now that we know some of the ranges of the costs. We have the total project cost here between 18.2 and 25.6 million. Alternate number 2 for NCPRD's portion would be 23.7. We have listed a variety of sources. Not all of them can be spent on the project as a whole. The first two would be specifically for the park area, the Metro local share available at 1 million. And then NCPRD has also been very successful at getting grants for parks. So we think we can leverage that Metro local share for a $1 million grant from the state. And then we have a variety of proceeds from Hoodview, potential property proceeds, library proceed, which would be for the library to buy their portion of the property and then be able to own it is one of the ways we're taking a look at it. SDCs from Zone 2, NCPRD reserves, which would be available at the time of construction. And then a revenue bond is a potential with a $550,000 per yearly payment. And that would essentially the same amount as the payment that the aquatic park was and has been paid off. And then looking again into the seismic grant. So there's a $21 to $23 million funds here, getting close to the potential of 23.7. I think the thing that's important here is that we will come to you with a project that we think is feasible. We need to study what are all of the feasibility of all of these funds, and then also take a real hard look at all of the costs. We may be able to phase parts of the project. We may be able to do alternates in the project, but that has yet to be studied. So next steps. As I mentioned, the online open house is open until August 2nd with the survey, and then we are working on getting some focus groups together. We know we're going to be successful getting the teens at least, and we have the task force in August will take a look at what has been gathered from that information from the community. The 1st of September, on the 5th and the 13th, the task forces will recommend a preferred alternative to be refined by the design team. Hopefully in September, you'll invite us back for an update and we can let you know what's happening with that. And then in October, the task force will recommend a refined design alternative to you for consideration. And if you approve that consideration, if it is approved, we would begin design and engineering, which would last for about another 1.5 years or so before construction would begin, design, engineering, and permitting. So I know that's a lot, and I'm sure you want to ask questions, but I do want to make sure that Lisa O'Brien, our Gladstone Task Force Chair, and Doug Jones, our Concord Property Task Force Chair have a minute to say a few things. So I'm going to try to stop sharing my screen. Which I'm having trouble doing. There we go.
All right, so let's go ahead and have those, Doug, and who else?
Lisa O'Brien.
Okay, Doug first and then Lisa. There you go.
Commissioners, and everyone else. This has been quite a project. It's been very exciting to be a part of a team of community members with a whole range of backgrounds, but as a very strong passion for seeing something great come to our community. To see the amazing skill and talent from Catherine, which you can tell just by listening and hearing her portion of the presentation, the design team, and the facilitators, JLA, have made this really a smooth process for us, much smoother than I think than we could have anticipated, despite some of the hurdles going through. You know, Catherine wasn't the original project manager. As I think back, I'm like, oh, that's right. We had a big hurdle just even getting going here. And then, of course, trying to meet, I think I myself was kind of apprehensive about the idea of that all of a sudden we're going to have to start meeting virtually and get together. But I think the team, our task force, really came together for that, and that was terrific to see the kind of energy that came out of that. In addition to being chair of the Concord Property and Library Planning Task Force, I'm also a member of the Oak Lodge Library Board, and actually was an employee of Clackamas County Library for 20 years.
Doug, can you wait a sec? Can everyone mute except Doug?
Am I making too much noise? I've got some background. I'm in the Happy Hour Library. Actually, we're busy, so.
Oh, that could be it.
It could be my background noise. I apologize.
That's okay.
Anyway, the Oak Lodge Library Board, we met. We've been, there've been lots of meetings, especially intensely this last couple months. But we met kind of after we'd seen all the design alternatives and came back to the task force with the library board's recommendation and approval that unanimously that we thought it's definitely feasible to have a library on the Concord property. There's just so much potential for partnership, for cost savings, and for just a really exciting offering to the community to be able to bring to them something that combines a park, combines a community center, combines a library, all in one location with that iconic and historic property, very well located. It does have its design challenges, but so it's been exciting to see the options that the design team gave to us. As Catherine mentioned, that option number 2 with the library addition, and yet still including a new gym and a sizable park that has so much to offer. We're really appreciative of that. It's also been helpful to us to know that we've had the county's support in this process. Knowing that we can go forward and feel like we're not going to be fighting a battle necessarily to make this happen, but to know that this is something that the county also believes would be good for the Oak Lodge community. I guess that's what I've got to share at this point. Thank you for your time.
Well, thank you, Doug. Lisa? There you go.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak today. I hear it's not a normal thing to allow people to speak, so we appreciate the time. We in Gladstone have had a similar experience to the one that Doug described, working with all the people involved. Everybody has been really helpful. We appreciate the county's support because it's been a long time coming for Gladstone to get a library. And though we would like our library today, we're trying to be patient and go through the process like everybody else. We have 14 task force members. We have some members at large. We have members from the library community. We have members from the Gladstone Foundation, and we have a person from the Clackamas County Board of Trustees, all working hard to try to make this library the best that it can be for the community. using those community values as guidelines. Our task force unanimously selected option 3 that you saw on Catherine's slideshow. We're really excited to see it come to fruition. Currently, we are seeking public input, as Catherine suggested, on all the design options, and we are hopeful they will come to the same option that we selected as being the best choice for our library. We're delighted with the progress so far. Like I said, we would like it to go much faster, but we understand things take time and it's a process. And so we're trying to be patient. We look forward to the construction starting in 2022 and the actual building in 2023. So thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. Now we got questions. Are we ready to move on to questions? Yes. Paul and then Ken.
Because it's been raised in the past, well, first of all, let me just back up. Thank you. I want to thank everyone involved in this project. I've attended a number of the meetings as best I can during this COVID thing. So OPSIS, great bunch of people to work with. The passion, the interest, the thought, the very thoughtful design and input from everyone involved in this. So it's kind of exciting to see it come together. But Jim, you when you opened this meeting up, you opened it as the NCPRD board, I guess, or district. And this is more of a county library type settlement, and the project, especially Gladstone, has no ties to NCPRD. So I just didn't know if that was by accident or not, but I just want to make clear in the spreadsheet that Catherine put together, that not that spreadsheet, but that one of the last 2 or 3 slides in blue there, when you showed all of the funding sources to feed that, that's a commingled funding package that you've got there, even though there's the library piece, there's the parks piece, and so forth. So I'm trying to, just so that no one gets confused who's looking at this, I've been following this. I'm understanding that the NCPRD is not building a library. That's correct, isn't it?
That's correct. Yes, that's correct.
Yeah, but the funding you showed there is commingled there for display purposes.
Actually, no, the project totals were for the NCPRD portion only, and the library totals were for the library portion only. So okay. I did have those split out.
Okay, so could you put that back up, please, then? I have a question then, because it shows the bond, and the bond was in for NCPRD, or the bond was for the library?
Both. Because we are assuming that there would be a bond for both.
Okay, but they're not going to be the same bond, right?
No, they wouldn't be the same bond, and others, Laura and Scott, can chime in, but they would be, the goal is to issue them at the same time to create some savings there.
Right, I just want, just because a question was raised by a member of another jurisdiction, and I just want to make sure that we're not, I'm just worried about some of the critical comments that were made recently, and not by you all doing great work, but this kind of adds to the confusion. I think some people think that this is being built on the backs of the NCPRD board of directors, our NCPRD district, when the library portion is not. So I think it's critical that we delineate going forward. I think that the cost will be appropriately apportioned responsibly and by design.
Absolutely.
You understand what I'm getting at?
Yeah, absolutely. And we have been splitting the costs of the project, 50% to the libraries and 50% to NCPRD. And things which are specifically related to the city of Gladstone would not be covered by NCPRD and vice versa. So we've been very careful to attribute costs to where they belong.
Right, and so that 50% apportionment split, that's for the study work, right? I mean, the
Right.
construction cost, do we have any idea? I'm sure with each of those scenarios that mixture might be a little bit different, right? Option 1 or option 2 and option, those options that the apportionment to the district and the apportionment to the county would be different.
Yeah, and we'll track that, as we have been with the cost estimates. The cost estimator and OPSIS did a great job of splitting those costs out, so we kind of know what goes where. And we will also make sure we do that when we move into to more detailed cost estimating and also into construction. So we'll be able to track who's paying for what.
Yeah. Like I said, I'm really excited. You're all doing great work. I just wanted to point that out just so that we don't find ourselves not in hot water, but because we haven't done anything wrong, but more that we could make this clear that this is not being funded on the backs of solely the library portion being funded on the backs of the district.
Right.
So I would say that that's the script I got, Paul. We're actually sitting as the Board of County Commissioners reviewing 2 different projects at the same time. So anyway, so Ken, you're up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was listening to the presentation and reflecting on where we were 4 years ago. We had a beautiful old public building that was potentially going to go into private hands. We had a lawsuit with one of our cities. We knew that we were underserving the Oak Grove Jennings Lodge area in a variety of ways, candidly. Something that was pointed out to me by Commissioner Savas when I first came on board. And I look at where we are today. A beautiful public building will remain a public building, which I believe is the right thing to do, keeping public facilities in the public's hands. They paid for them, and repurposing them, I think, is the way to go. We now have a good, positive working relationship with our cities, particularly the city that has the library that we will be building. And I want to commend their city council and their mayor for working with the county to resolve that issue to the benefit of their city and to the county citizens as a whole. NCPRD staff, our Business and Community Service Division, Laura, you guys have done yeoman work putting this together, putting all these pieces together. Again, I think back to where we were 4 years ago. It's incredible progress. The outreach to the communities for these projects is remarkable as far as I'm concerned. Lots of people had lots of opportunity to put lots of input into this process, which is as much as possible how we ought to do business going forward whenever we can. So just for me, it was just a matter of reflection as to where we were, how far we've come, and that this board made a commitment to all 3 communities to make certain that these issues would be resolved in a positive way for the community, and we're getting there. So I want to thank everybody for the work that they've done, and I'll leave it at that. I don't have questions. I just really think some remarkably good work has been done by all of the players. So thank you.
I just want to say that I'm exhausted from the work you did. All right, any other questions or comments? So seeing none, thank you all very much for coming in today. Glad you guys could participate, Lisa and Doug, and look forward to seeing the progress.
Looking forward to the groundbreaking.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your time.
All right, Gary.
All right, that's the end of policy sessions, but we're going back to issues now and commissioner communications.
Anybody got any issues?
No issues. Not a lot to comment on from my end. The movie theaters moving forward, or drive-in movie theaters moving forward on the fairgrounds, and revenues are up with tourism, though of course not where we would hope they would be, and I will leave it at that.
Anybody, Paul?
I'm reluctant to say what I want to say, so I'm just gonna pause.
All right. Martha?
Yeah, I've been playing with 3 different, an iPad, a computer, well, 2 iPads, a computer, and my phone in order to get ready to try and figure out how I'm going to do a board meeting and vote tomorrow with NACO. So that's been quite the experience, right? I've got multiple windows opened just to make sure that if one doesn't work, I can switch quickly to another one. It's pretty much a board meeting where we'll review, welcome new people onto the board, and we'll be reviewing all the national policy proposals and as a board voting to move forward with them. And then Monday is the meeting where we will vote for the second president. So just trying to figure out the electronics of long distance. So that's all I've got.
Thank you, Martha. Sonia?
No updates.
Okay.
Go ahead. Oh, no update. All right. Well, then it sounds like we're done for the day. Thank you. A lot of great, the housing thing was fantastic. The library thing was fantastic. I'm really inspired by all the work these groups have done. So
Yep.
I guess we have a listening post tomorrow. We're going to be talking about masks. So if anyone wants to join us, wear your mask. Other than that, have a great evening.
Okay. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.